Hi, it's Sally from Field to Fork, and here I am in a field of winter barley which is golden, ripe and ready for harvest. And so, being a fine dry day at the beginning of August, the combines are out and started. Harvest is underway. So welcome to the third part of the cereal story, harvesting the crop. In order to make sure the crop is evenly ripe, it was sprayed off 2 weeks ago to kill the plants and so ripen the seeds. And so now it is completely golden. The seeds are full and hard. If some of the grains were still green, particularly in parts of the field where it's sheltered from the sun, such as under trees, these seeds would not have properly formed. If the crop was left until these parts were ripe, the earlier ripened grains might well be shed and lost. Before beginning to combine, the farmer will probably visit the field to check how dry the crop is. And then when the first load comes in from the combine, he will test it using a moisture meter.
Measure, set them out into the grinder. That grinds it quite fine. So I say oilseed and oats, we use the coffee grinder. We ground it, so now we'll compress it.
If it comes in too damp or too hot, it needs to be dried, but this adds cost and effort. The combine harvester is a huge, complicated and very expensive bit of farm machinery, worth up to £500,000. But it does the whole harvesting job all at once. The cutting, the threshing and the separating out of the grains from the stalks, through a series of rotating blades, wheels, sieves and elevators. The header, the wide part at the front of the combine with the turning reel, pulls the stalks of grain onto the table where there are sets of knives that cut them off. These stalks are then pulled towards the centre of the table with an auger that looks like a giant corkscrew, and then they're taken up into the body of the combine. From the cab, the driver can keep an eye on what is happening on the table, and he must make sure that everything is going smoothly. He also must set the table at just the right level so that it's not too low so as to dig up stones and clods of earth which would break the machine, or too high that would leave too little straw, especially if the straw is needed for baling. Once inside, the stalks of grains are threshed, which means the grains or seeds are separated from the stalks or straw. And this happens in a huge rotating drum, which looks a bit like a washing machine, which tumbles and shakes the grains around. And it works a bit like this, tumbling them round and beating them to separate the grains from the straw. The seeds then drop down through sieves which hold the straw back. So now the two parts are going in different directions. As the grains are carried away by the auger, a fan blows air through to blow away the chaff or any lighter small parts before another auger takes it up to be collected in the tank on the top of the combine. Meanwhile, the straw carries on from the drum along the shaking sieves to make sure no grain is trapped before it's cast out the back of the combine. If the straw is not needed, it will be chopped by knives on the back of the combine and scattered over the soil. Whereas if it is to be baled, it'll be laid in rows ready for the baler. The grains are collected from the combine by a tractor and trailer driving alongside. The tractor will then take the grain into the farm steading where it can be stored. Often the grain needs to be dried before it can be stored, otherwise it would rot and go bad. And so this is done by passing it through a grain dryer, which works a bit like a great hair dryer. So these fans blow air through the grain which is inside this big cylinder. It can then be stored until it's needed, which might be up to a year later. After the winter barley comes the oilseed rape and winter oats, and then the winter wheat and spring sown barley, oats and wheat as they ripen. And so harvest takes several weeks depending on the weather. As if that's not busy enough, as soon as the early crops are harvested, the land is being cultivated and drilled with next year's oilseed rape and winter cereals, and so the cycle begins all over again. To find out more about the crops grown at the Hirsel and the foods they make, you might like to take a look at our Field to Fork website, where there are videos, information and activities to help you.